All right, man, peace. You know, every once in a while you get very fortunate drafts, whether they be in the NBA or the NFL. Sometimes great players just fall into your lap. And I believe that the New York Jets may be the beneficiaries of such an instance with the acquisition of Mr. Sam Darnold. He has shined in the preseason, and what he basically did was he made Teddy Bridgewater, the former starting quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings, expendable. Despite the fact that Teddy Bridgewater is a far more experienced quarterback, and he displayed stellar play in the preseason, we also have to keep in mind that he is a former NFL starting quarterback, and he was going up against second and third stringers. So, of course, he was going to look very good. I believe that the Jets brought him in just so that they could build up his equity and trade him. Now, of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
This is SportsCenter right now. I'm Antonieta Collins. We had quarterbacks on the move yesterday, including Teddy Bridgewater. The Jets are sending him to the Saints for a third-round pick. So what does this mean as to who will start under center New York and the rest of its team?
Well, we already know what the Jets trading Teddy Bridgewater means. That means that they're all in on Sam Darnold. They wanted to give him the preseason to see how good he was going to be. He showed himself to be a very good decision maker, extremely accurate, very mature, understands the playbook, so that made Teddy Bridgewater expendable. Bridgewater is very similar to a Tyrod Taylor. He's a serviceable starting quarterback. He'd be an excellent backup, and that's pretty much what he's going to be in his tenure with New Orleans. He's also someone that New Orleans can sell as a possible replacement for Drew Brees down the line once Drew Brees retires. Do I think that Teddy Bridgewater will ever be a star in the NFL? No, I do not. I think that he's a serviceable quarterback, but you never know what someone can blossom into. The point being is this: the Jets have no championship level aspirations. So there's really no need for you to create this dynamic on your squad where if Sam Darnold has a couple of bad games in a row, the New York media and the fans are asking for Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy Bridgewater is not your future. He's 26, 27 years old, coming off of a devastating knee injury. You want to see how good Sam Darnold can be. So they made the right decision.
Our Jets reporter Rich Cimini explains.
The Teddy Bridgewater trade means two things for the Jets. One, it confirms the obvious. Rookie Sam Darnold will be the opening day starter. Still no official announcement from Coach Todd Bowles, but the plan is to roll with Darnold as the one and Josh McCown, the $10 million mentor, as the backup.
Let me say this. I've been watching the Jets since the days of Al Toon and Kenny O'Brien. I remember Rob Moore. I remember Blair Thomas. I remember Mo Lewis. I remember James Hasty. Like, these are names that I'm naming that if you watch the Jets going back to the early 90s, you know what I'm talking about. Pretty much the best quarterback that the Jets have ever had in regards to productivity for one season, in regards to peak value, was Vinny Testaverde in 1998. When they were able to get to the AFC Championship game. Other than that, it's basically been dud after dud after dud after dud. Now, Chad Pennington came into the forefront in the early 2000s, but he was very reminiscent of the Jay-Z line. He had a spark when he started, but now he's just garbage. So we'll see what Sam Darnold can become. I heard a very interesting stat. There has only been one Jets quarterback to ever throw for 4,000 yards, and that was Joe Namath about 50 years ago. So that tells you the problems that the Jets have had at quarterback. I remember watching the Jets in the days of Kenny O'Brien, where Dan Marino would throw for 400 yards against the Jets, and Kenny O'Brien would throw for 370 yards against the Dolphins, and always throw that big interception to end the game. That's what I go back to watching these damn Jets. So we'll see what Sam Darnold can do.
It also gives the Jets an extra trade chip. They're looking for a pass rusher, and they've been linked to Khalil Mack of the Raiders. Having that extra third rounder will give them some extra ammo as they work the phones.
For more on the Jets, here's First Take.
Of course, trading Teddy Bridgewater was viewed as a good maneuver to put the Jets in an advantageous position to eventually attempt to acquire Khalil Mack. But people understand who pay attention that gaining a third-round draft pick was not going to help you get Khalil Mack when the Oakland Raiders won record is stating that it was going to take 2 first-round draft picks to get him. So they were just setting the bar very high, and as we know by now, Khalil Mack has been traded to the Chicago Bears.
Teddy Bridgewater was a Viking Jet
and now a Saint all in 1 year, man on the move. He was playing very well in preseason, but Sam is the Jets guy. On that note, we welcome in Jeff Saturday. Always good to have you, Jeff.
I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Max, I want to start with you. Good or bad move by Gang Green?
I think it was a great move. I think that it was a necessary move. Let's be frank for a moment. We've seen Teddy Bridgewater's come through the NFL. He's a nice, serviceable quarterback. I think that he makes a great backup. I think that he can be a career backup because, from what I understand, he's a great team guy. Do I think that he's ever going to be a starting quarterback on a Super Bowl contender? No, I do not. I think that he's someone who's going to be very serviceable for the New Orleans Saints as a backup, because I think that Drew Brees is going to play for at least another 3 to 4 years. So by the time Drew Brees decides to retire, Bridgewater is going to be damn near 30 years old. They'll put him in the position to possibly start if they have not drafted a young quarterback by then. But I don't think that he's ever going to be a starting quarterback on an NFL team that expects to win a championship. So it was a good move by the Jets. Why have that dynamic there? Why have Teddy Bridgewater there as a possible obstacle to developing Sam Darnold, who you're putting all your stock into Sam Darnold?
I like the move for the Jets. I think it's a great move by the Saints. I do not like the move for the Jets. And I understand you flip Teddy Bridgewater, you just gave the money into a third-round pick. I get that. You're not going to start him anyway. I get that. I would have started him and let Darnold hold the clipboard for a little while so you avoid a quarterback controversy.
Well, that's the reason why they traded Teddy Bridgewater, Max Kellerman. You just answered your own question. Why would you start Teddy Bridgewater to appease him? What has he done in the NFL to deserve that starting role over a draft pick that you picked as high as you picked Sam Darnold? In the NFL of today, you basically expect your draft picks from about 1 to 10 to be immediate starters, or at least threaten to be immediate starters. In the Jets' view, Sam Darnold outcompeted Teddy Bridgewater in the preseason. Now, Teddy has played moderately well in the preseason, but once again, he was going up against, for the most part, second and third stringers. And Darnold has still been better than him. He's still shown more willingness to throw the ball downfield. Once again, we already know what Teddy Bridgewater is. He's a great bridge quarterback, so that's a very appropriate name for him. He's never going to be someone who you're going to put the football in his hands and say, lead us to victory. I watched him in, I believe, his last playoff game in Minnesota. All he wants to do is throw 5-yard patterns. That's all he does. He refuses to throw the football down the field. Teddy Bridgewater is that guy on 3rd and 8. He's throwing a 6-yard out pattern. You're like, what the hell are you doing?
Bridgewater stays in New York and Darnold falters. There's a controversy in you go to New Orleans and you got Drew Brees and he's the heir apparent. But let me tell you, so it makes sense superficially, but if you dig a little deeper, here's the problem. If Bridgewater just sits on the Jets bench, his value only goes up because inevitably someone's going to get hurt. I mean, knock wood, that doesn't happen, but someone probably will. And at that point, you're going to have a desperate team, maybe a desperate team that thinks they're a playoff team. And Bridgewater's value at that point skyrockets. Look.
That's possible, Max Kellerman, but what if somebody does not get hurt across the NFL until week 11? And by then, potentially, you're 3-6 as a team. The New York Jets are 3-6. And your fans have been talking about pulling Sam Darnold and starting Teddy Bridgewater. Let's say Teddy Bridgewater has started a couple of games, and the team has played better with him than they have with Sam Darnold. Now you have a quarterback controversy. Now you're thinking about keeping Teddy Bridgewater as opposed to trading him. Now, at least with him gone, you can allow Sam Darnold to develop. I mean, how much more is Sam Darnold going to learn holding a clipboard? Those days of a quarterback holding the clipboard for 3 or 4 years, they died with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers probably could have been just as good, if not even better, had he started from a rookie year. Because at least then he would have gotten 3 more years of on-field development, on-field experience. I'm not a fan of the quarterback hold a clipboard until we feel like you're ready dynamic or modus operandi. I don't believe that works. I think that the best way to learn is through experience. You drafted Sam Darnold number 4 in the draft. Throw him out there and let's see what he can do. The Jets knew what they had with Teddy Bridgewater. So just move him now. That's a very big gamble to say, well, later on in the season, one of these major quarterbacks is going to be hurt and a team that's looking at the Super Bowl or has playoff aspirations is going to be hearkening for Teddy Bridgewater. That's not the guy that you go to when you want to win a Super Bowl anyway. I'm sorry. So just move him now. Give Darnold the freedom to develop without worrying about if I throw an interception, they're going to bring in Teddy Bridgewater.
If Bridgewater doesn't get paid a lot of money, the reason you can't get very high draft picks usually, I'm sure people are wondering, wait, that's a good player. Why are you only getting a third-round pick? Third-rounders don't always even start. Like, what's the deal there? It's because draft picks are cheap. You don't have to pay them yet. And veterans, you got to pay, right? But if Teddy Bridgewater, knowing everything we know about him right now, all the NFL film we got on him, all the injury history, everything, we're in this draft, there's no way that he's lower than a high second rounder. Much more likely, that's a first-round pick. And you don't have to pay.
There's not one team in the NFL that's going to give up a first-round pick for Teddy Bridgewater. You must be out of your damn mind.
So I don't like the return on Bridgewater. I know they're getting something for nothing in a sense because they just had to sign him and now they're flipping him into a draft pick. But I think they...
That's the point, Max Kellerman. You just answered your own question yet again. Number one, there's no team in the NFL that's going to give up a first-round draft pick for Teddy Bridgewater. Number two, you signed Teddy Bridgewater off the scrap heap and you turn him into a third-round draft pick.
Gotten more had they waited.
I got to admit to you, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I got to admit that to you. And the reason why I say that is because I think that Teddy Bridgewater is a talent. I'm not trying to knock him in any way, Max. Jeff, by the way, it's great to see you. I'm not trying to knock it in any way, but I'm like, what is all this noise about Teddy Bridgewater? You have a doctor who's on the record talking about how shattered his knee looked. You're going to have trepidation on the part of NFL executives because of that. And then when you look at his career, we talk about Teddy Bridgewater like he's been around for years and he's been smoking everybody. The man has had 28 career starts, a 17-11 record, completing 64.7% of his passes. I get all of that.
Yeah.
He's completing 64.7% of his passes, and he's basically a dink and dunk guy. It's not like he's Aaron Rodgers throwing the football 15, 20 yards down the field. He's a dink and dunk guy, and he's completing 64.7%. So that's actually a bit low when you look at his yards per attempt.
He's never thrown more than 14 touchdowns in a season.
14 touchdowns in a season. That's less than one per game.
28 touchdowns and 22 interceptions on his career.
That's pedestrian statistics at best.
Considered relatively pedestrian, and throughout his 28 starts, he's averaged 219.6 passing yards. That ain't knocking anybody's socks off. I understand he can play, that he's not a scrub. He belongs in the league. I can appreciate the fact that he could potentially start for several teams in this league, but to act like this is Teddy Bridgewater, oh my God, what a steal, what a great, great guy to have, etc., etc. A third-round pick in the NFL, a third-round pick is considered very valuable, and I think that that's about right.
Absolutely. Do you have any idea who's been drafted in the third round in the history of the NFL?
Jeff?
Stephen A., I agree with you, my man. You was preaching. I was just listening, man. That was well said. I could not agree more. Max, I understand what you're saying about if you hold him on the bench, maybe his value increases. You're talking about a QB controversy. There is no controversy for the New York Jets. They know who their guy for now is. They know who the guy for the future is, and that's Sam Darnold. If for something happens that's catastrophic and McCown has to come in, you know he can do what he does. You got to redo it anyway. So they understand what they have. But I could not agree more with what Stephen A. just said. Teddy Bridgewater looked good in preseason. He does have a major knee issue to overcome. And by the way, the offense for the Jets isn't going to give you a ton more with Bridgewater or Darnold. So,
agreed. So if there's not a big disparity between both those quarterbacks, just start the young guy that you drafted number 4 in the draft. It's not really a difficult decision to make. To think that Teddy Bridgewater is going to commandeer your team and Sam Darnold is going to be expected to learn so much by watching him on the sidelines. It's one thing to have Aaron Rodgers watching Brett Favre or Steve Young to be watching Joe Montana. But to say we're going to have Sam Darnold watch Teddy Bridgewater, that makes no sense whatsoever.
as you're looking at what you do, you put him in with the Saints. That's a peak, right? You got Sean Payton who's calling plays. but he has been very average. Even Zimmer in Minnesota said he didn't want to pull the trigger. He held back. He kind of held back our offense at times by not making the play that we asked him, by not stretching the field vertically. He played too conservative. All of those things. So from the Jets' perspective of what they're looking at, they are settled in their home. They understand what they have at both McCown and with Sam Darnold. They didn't need more. And a third-round pick is it is a valuable pick. And when you're talking about Bridgewater being on the bench, I think from anybody, you're holding 3 quarterbacks, you're holding a roster spot. There's a lot of different things that you're going through. And I'm with you. I like Teddy Bridgewater. I think he has, the potential to do some great things.
And beyond that, why would you hold 3 quarterbacks on a team that, once again, is not expected to even make the playoffs, much less challenge for a Super Bowl title? There's no way. Let that boy Sam Darnold go out there and show what he can do. Once again, it's one thing if you're Aaron Rodgers sitting behind Brett Favre, or if you're Steve Young sitting behind Joe Montana. And I'm already on record as stating, I thought that the Packers should have started Aaron Rodgers from the very, very start. Because it was obvious to me that Brett Favre was done. He was still living off of what he was doing back in the mid-90s.
Saints' perspective, what they're trying to do with him, he may give you 3 or 4 games this year if something happened to Drew Brees, but you're looking for a potential future guy in that system, understanding Sean Payton. There was never a future in New York for him. They did not have that vision for him. The vision is always Sam Darnold. So get while you can get what you can get while you can get it. Don't risk it. You have no idea what the season's going to do. You have no idea what that's going to look like in the end. You know what you can get now. I think it was a good move by New York.
But Jeff, listen, I get your points. Number one, and I have 2 things to say about that. Number one, your value is only going to go up. If they'll give you a 3rd-round pick now, they'll give you at least that later.
Well, that's speculative. You're hoping that his value will go up over the course of the season. You wanted Bridgewater to start. Say Bridgewater starts and the Jets are 3-7. What makes you think his value is going to go up? Now, when they showed those stats, they showed that Bridgewater was averaging better stats. But once again, he has more experience. He's going up against 2nd and 3rd string guys. We already know what Teddy Bridgewater is. He can have a nice day. Nothing against the brother. I hope that he fully heals from his knee injury. And I hope that he can grow as a quarterback and become a starter somewhere else. But the Jets have made this big investment in Darnold, and I want to see how good he can be.
If the market develops, which is likely, because teams get, there's a need right now. There's really not a need.
That's not always the case.
I'm saying, give me a bunch of examples of when someone mid-season gives a first rounder for a guy. Because when you're talking about a playoff team, what playoff team are we talking about that's going to bring in Teddy Bridgewater that we know without being in their system is going to take them to the playoffs? Like I don't buy that same idea.
It's not necessarily you get a first rounder, but whatever you get now, you will get more later. They're willing to give that 3rd rounder now. Does that 3rd rounder become more valuable a couple weeks into the season? You're going to get at least that. So what's the value in doing it now? 2, Bridgewater's value as a quarterback. Stephen A., you point to the fact that he's like average. He's an okay starter.
A little above average.
That's
a little above average.
Okay.
I think that is up for debate, whether or not Bridgewater is even above average. Just looking at his lifetime statistics, his win-loss record, please understand that Minnesota had one of the top defenses in the league and the legendary Adrian Peterson while he was there. And he was still only, what did Stephen A. say he was, 28-22 as a starter? So, I mean, he's certainly not knocking your socks off.
But he was an okay starter at a young age, and he was getting better before the injury. Now, the injury concern, I totally agree about, and that was the question with him coming into the league. Was he's kind of slightly built, so I get the injury concern.
But that's
I understand that. But he is a young and improving quarterback who already established he's at least starter quality. If that guy is not getting paid yet,
he's starter quality on a poor to average team. He's not starter quality on a top-level team. He's just not.
That's better than a 3rd-round pick.
But Max, hold on, Jeff. Max, with all due respect, you're all over the place. Because here's the deal. When you sit up there and you say, okay, listen. What I'm saying is, you're talking about his value will increase, but then you bring up the fact that he got injured and there's an injury to overcome. So the reality is that you don't know that, A. B, the Jets are in pursuit of Khalil Mack. This is an additional asset that would facilitate you potentially pulling off a deal for one of the premier defensive players in the game. Point number 2.
Well, let me say this before Stephen A. Smith goes to point number 3, because he is laying out a pretty good scenario in regards to why the Jets made this trade. But the Jets never really were considered a possibility for Khalil Mack to be traded to if all they were trying to attain was a third-round draft pick. They just weren't. Khalil Mack is considered one of the top 3 to 5 defensive players in the NFL. A third-round draft pick was certainly not going to be the difference maker in them being able to get Khalil Mack.
Point number 3, I go back to what I say we saw from Teddy Bridgewater when he was 100% healthy. And what we saw from Teddy Bridgewater when he was 100% healthy was a relatively pedestrian quarterback who didn't take too many risks, who received coaching well, who has the football acumen, which we're all proud.
I agree. Teddy Bridgewater was extremely pedestrian, but what he had going for him was that he was considered a great quote-unquote team guy. And you'll see that a lot with players that are able to hang around, not just in football, but in basketball, baseball, and other team sports as well. If they can come into the locker room, they get along with everybody, they're more likely to make the roster, despite the fact that their talent may just be marginal.
Completed 64% of his passes, but wasn't a game changer. He was more of a game manager.
And I'll
That's
say
what we
this.
saw.
No,
Max, let me say
They wouldn't let him be a game changer. They were hoping.
Let Jeff get in.
The other side of this is Bridgewater's value is high now because the Saints know they can bring him into the system and he can have game after game with Breeze, with Sean Payton. The reason it makes sense for another team right now, when you're talking about week 7 or week 6 or whenever we can get that final trade in, you're asking him to come in on a short stint with what you're talking about, potential injury for your starter, and now what can he learn? I'm telling you, it doesn't work that way. You need time to grow in the offense. So whatever team wanted to strike to get a quarterback to come help him, now is the time. You don't have that window you're thinking. It's not like a plug and play where you bring a quarterback in all of a sudden, hey, I know every offense in the NFL. It doesn't work that way. You have to understand the system that you're going in.
Jeff,
Can you compliment it?
I
so
understand.
if you're asking the guy to come in in 3 days,
I get it. That's part of
the earlier you
That's
get.
part of his value.
I'm saying you won't
That's
get
part
it.
of his value to be Nick Foles. That's
Nick
part of his
Foles
value
was
is to be
there.
Nick Foles.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeff Saturday. Nick Foles was a part of that team for more than a year. That's why he was able to, I won't say replace Carson Wentz seamlessly, but even Nick Foles, it took him a couple of games to get into his flow. But he already knew the offense. Max Kellerman just does not know what the hell he's talking about, and he's trying to find a way, to be quite honest with you, to play the super liberal Caucasian Jew. Let's keep the black quarterback around. I understand what Max Kellerman is really trying to cape up for. And I like Teddy Bridgewater. I'm happy that he was able to come back from his devastating knee injury. But from a purely business perspective, the Jets made the right move.
Right, but I understand. But there's also more value. It's also that he's young and ascending if healthy, and Drew Brees.
So Teddy Bridgewater is young and ascending if healthy. So you don't even know if he's healthy enough to be considered ascending. They would not have been able to discern how good a quarterback Teddy Bridgewater would have been unless he was starting during the regular season, which is the one consistency that Max Kellerman had, because at least he stated that he wanted Teddy Bridgewater to start this season. But there's no way in hell that you could allow a quarterback coming off of the level of devastation that he suffered with the injury that Teddy Bridgewater had back in 2015 or whenever it was, and say, we're going to start him over our number 4 draft pick in the first round. That just makes no sense whatsoever.
Is approaching 40.
Because, I mean, shit, if that's the case, just start McCown again. Just let Josh McCown start again like he did last year.
Bridgewater, you may also be getting the quarterback of your future. Not this year or next, but in the not-too-distant future. And you want to take a look up close to see if you believe he can be that guy. There's also value there. Stephen A., the Khalil Mack thing, if the Jets wind up flipping the pick into Khalil Mack, among other things, into Khalil Mack, I'll back off. If the Jets wind up with Khalil Mack because of this deal, then I was wrong. Let's see if they do it.
All right, that was a
I'm
great
just saying, but
statement.
that's how they got it. How would they be able to try without pulling off this deal, Max?
Right, you gotta
That's
have
a kind of
numbers. You gotta have
disingenuous position for you to take. That's how you go try to make a deal like this, by doing something like this to facilitate
All
it.
right, 2-on-1 in this one. Got to agree to disagree. Jeff Saturday, you're good TV. We'll see more of you on
Appreciate
NFL
you.
Live.
But anyway, that's basically it on that. We'll see how the Jets season goes. For years, it's been predicted that one of these teams in the AFC East are going to take down the Patriots. I just don't see it. I do like the Jets coach, though. So we'll see. But it's going to be very interesting to be able to ascertain exactly how good this young cat that they have at quarterback is going to be. Sam Darnold, you're on the clock. So peace.